And we're live.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to a special episode of the WTTA podcast. Today's Wednesday. We're halfway there. Just want to take a moment to say that lately we have been focusing on youth and youth sport shooting sports and the importance of why we need to run towards that, why we've gotten away from that. Last week we had Derek LeBlanc from Kids Safe on. This week we are being joined by Devin Perkins of Kids to Kings, 2A advocate. Many of you know him. But what we want to talk about today is the focus on the youth in underprivileged, underserved areas and almost why that's never been a thing. Obviously, we all have different answers on how we could address these issues. I feel, and I'm just going to put it out there to address the elephant in the room, that when it comes to the issues that Black youth face, and it comes to firearms violence, no one has a clue. And it wasn't until I met Devin where I said that makes sense to me, right? Because I had never really thought about it. But Devin, introduce yourself, and why don't you tell people that have never heard of you who you are?
My name is Devin Perkins. I am the founder of Kids to Kings outreach program. We basically met in, I believe, 2019 at, I believe it was NRAM in Indianapolis. It was like the last NRAM before COVID actually happened. Um, yeah, we long story short, how Kids to Kings came to birth. Me and one of my friends, we were working together at a burger shop of all places, and he was he had just left a gang, and we were in the same Bible study group, and essentially it kind of turned into like the gang against like the Bible study group in a sense, because I ended up moving him to my house, and just watching all of the like the different situations that we dealt with and different I don't know, just different survival modes that I saw him go through, it opened my eyes to one, offer him resources that I was privy to, and then two, it opened my mind to think that more people, especially more kids, are probably dealing with a lot of the same things. So I wanted to do something to combat all of the negative influences. And Kids of Kings and Walk the Talk to America was essentially the vehicle that allowed me to do that. So that's basically what we do now. We got introduced to the study of complex trauma and CPTSD. From that, my mind was wide open as far as addressing the mental health side, because I felt like those were topics that are yeah, those were topics and titles that Black communities suffer from the most, and I just made wanted to make sure that we weren't left out of that conversation. So we put the pilot program together. We did a couple presentations during some Black Guns Matter classes with Maj Toure, and then we were finally blessed enough to open the flagship program in Atlanta um, with a Title I charter school, and it's been, I would say, a complete success from then to now. It's been 3 years. This upcoming school year will be our fourth year, and we have 15 boys that are returning. A couple of them have moved on because they went to high school, and we keep tabs on them, but we really focus on the middle schoolers. The high schoolers, we have a different approach for them as far as being hands on all the time, but the middle schoolers and elementary school age kids, we deal with them every single day. Classroom check-ins, shoot, parent check-ins. Basically, we set a standard and we hold them to that standard. And for boys, consistency is a big thing as far as creating a foundation of structure for them and allowing them to do dangerous things in safe environments is the second biggest thing. So We like to get them out of their regular environment, and then we try to teach them any type of life lesson, morals, principles, anything like that. And that's when I would say that they're most receptive. I don't want to keep ranting if you got more questions, but
No,
yeah,
that's
that's
that's perfect way to put it. And this is a question for both of you, I guess. And Kevin Barry's joining us today as well. But marketing, sometimes I love your perspective on things, Kevin, just because you didn't come up. It wasn't that you weren't around guns or understood guns, but being that when you came on to do the marketing for WTTA, you really got immersed into the community and saw the way we think. What is the reason? Why did we get away from educating the youth in general in the firearms community? It's something I've never understood. I feel like there was such an emphasis on it when I was younger. You saw like the Eddie the Eagle program with the NRA, and then I feel like the NRA kind of shifted its priorities into more political, fight the Democrats. Everyone's trying to take your guns, space, but somehow we kind of moved away. And I don't know if that was a anti-gun thing. Like, were they winning with their rhetoric that was keeping more parents saying, "Oh, just keep the kids away from guns, period"? Or, I mean, maybe you guys feel like there still is a movement there. I don't know, but what are your thoughts? We'll start with Kevin and then go to Devin.
It almost seems like more individual firearm trainers, gun ranges, they kind of picked up the torch. You said the NRA kind of had their program. Everybody kind of knows what happened with the NRA, and the support around that kind of went the other direction. And it doesn't seem like anybody took that up as maybe from the industry side that says we're really going to own it, because it seems like everybody else had it. I know the local range in Reno Guns and Range has multiple youth firearm safety courses every month. I know other trainers kind of in the smaller town Nevadas have their youth firearms. So it's almost like they left it to the individuals thinking, oh, they got it covered. Maybe Devin, what do you think?
I would agree with that. I also think it's not promoted as much because education is boring and fear mongering is more exciting, and it's easier to get somebody's emotions attached to fear mongering marketing and make them feel like they're actually doing something by donating their $20 a month to the NRA. That's more exciting and going to be more effective than investing in their communities and investing in the next generation. So yeah, I agree that they've gone more local, and I think there are programs that are doing it. They're modernizing it a lot. Armand and Burgett with Prime Protection STL, they're actually in a public school county in St. Louis now. So there are different programs out there. We just have to make them more known, I would say, and modernize them because kids don't want to shoot 1022s anymore. They don't want to shoot the regular old types of guns. They want to shoot what they see in their video games. So I don't see a problem with dropping, 22 conversion kits and MP5s or giving them 22 pistols and teaching them the right way to use them.
Yeah, it's really interesting when you think about the video game aspect of firearms. It's like our kids are probably way more knowledgeable these days about the different types of guns that are out there just because they're introduced. When I played video games as a kid, it looked like a gun. You didn't actually know there wasn't brand specific, like you were holding that particular firearm and that gun. Maybe when you played like 007 or something, you knew it was a Walther PPK, but just because that was common knowledge. But now, like, some of these kids gun knowledge is probably just as high as mine when it comes to the different brands and the different types of guns. But I would say there's probably a majority of these kids now that don't even know how to use it or wouldn't know how to use it if it was sitting on a table. They know how to use it in a video game, but have no clue about it. Which, I guess some people would argue that in their world that's better, right? Because they're not actually messing with guns. But in our world, we know that's, I think, probably more dangerous, right? Because you're not teaching them everything that comes with firearms ownership, the responsibility, and how empowering that can be.
I agree. I agree. With freedom comes responsibility. And if you're going to give your kids the freedom to be introduced to something dangerous like guns, you should probably do something on the lesser entertainment side to make sure they understand that, yeah, that what you're doing is entertainment and it's fun, but in real life, these things are to inflict the most possible damage they can. Like that's what guns are designed to do. So yeah, I agree. There has to be a twofold introduction instead of just letting them go free and learning the wrong way.
Yeah, I mean, even for me, and I've shared this story a lot more often than I used to, but my first experience with a firearm was a negligent discharge. Um, was smart enough not to understand that there was a potential of me pulling the trigger and the firearm going off, but did not understand one in the chamber. So thank God the crew that I was with, we weren't pointing the gun at each other, but there was a moment where my friend almost shot a hole in his father's bed because we found his dad's gun. And we took the magazine out and he pointed at the bed and he goes, "Do you think this thing is still loaded?" And I was, like I said, I was lucky enough, smart enough to say, "Oh, dude, let's go out in the backyard. Don't shoot that off in here just in case it's loaded." So we went in the backyard and blew a hole in the ground. Story seems funny now. No one got hurt, just scared the shit out of us. But looking back on it, even as a little kid, if I would have understood one in the chamber, and these are the type of things that the video game is not necessarily teaching you, right? People are not necessarily, they're teaching you to stay away from the guns. We all know kids don't stay away from anything. I mean, majority of the kids I knew growing up, they knew where their parents' porn was. They knew they knew where their parents' gun was. They knew where the parents' alcohol was, right? And as much as you want to think, I told them not to mess around with it. I taught them about that. And if they messed with it, we all messed with it when you left, especially when you're raised by a single mom or single dad. Like we all knew where it was and we went right to it. So it's kind of like the abstinence thing. Like you could tell a kid not to have sex before marriage all you want to, you're blue in the face, and maybe you roll the dice and that works out for your kid. Congratulations. But let's face it, most people don't care about that. Like they don't care what you say. They're going to do what they got to do. So you want to put them in the best possible situation if those moments come up. And that's really how I feel about gun safety. And I mean, Devin, you have some really unique stories, and I know you don't want to put anybody's business out there, but I mean, I remember the first time you were telling me, like, I think it was one of the first classes you asked, like, how many of you have access to a firearm, even if you're not supposed to? And didn't the whole class raise their hand?
Just about, yeah. Yep,
Yeah.
just about. They knew where they were. Some of them even knew exactly what kind of guns they were. But yeah, yeah. Second crazy story is probably listening to one of the boys talk about them watching their dad get his head blown off and surviving, and like having to sit there with him until the ambulance got there. That one was pretty wild. There was another one where a stray bullet came through one of the windows, broke the window, and a shred of glass went into one of the boys' backs. So that one was pretty wild too. But yeah, we got stories for days. But the biggest thing with those stories is I try to make sure that they understand that one, it's probably not necessarily the most positive thing, but a lot of them have those same stories, and them knowing that should be a center point where they can all come together and heal with each other and be each other's comfort more than anything. Secondly, I try to make sure that they use those stories for empowerment instead of like using them as a crutch for anything. Because yes, they happened, and now that they're past it, they can one properly heal and talk about it, especially with us. Two, like I just mentioned, if they know people that have gone through the same type of situation, they can be there for that person as well. But yeah, we have some wild stories. That's why we try to use firearms more so as a martial art than anything else. If you can introduce to the child or the young mind to the importance and the severity of how they're used and what the outcome is when they're used incorrectly, as opposed to what they're really for. Um, I think that's the biggest way to change the influence that they have from anybody that's introducing them to guns. We were in the car this last trip for the one for their end of the year trip, and the boys were talking about rappers and how rappers were standing on business because they were doing all this wild stuff in the streets, right? And I just had to stop him and ask him. I was like, let me just ask you, like, y'all have seen all of my social medias, y'all have seen all my TikTok pages, everything. Y'all see what KD does, y'all see what Eddie with Gorillas in the Mist does. Like, we showed them all of these uh gun creators content. And I just asked him, I was like, who do y'all think is winning in a gunfight? If it's me, KD, and Eddie versus name any of the 10 rappers that y'all want to choose. Who's going to win that? And they said us. And I was like, okay. So if you already know that they're not the toughest thing out here, why do y'all put so much emphasis into the nonsense that they're putting into their music? And we really had to have a long conversation about them understanding that most of them, one, are lying. Two, they're not even like practitioners of the guns that they're talking about. So yeah, it's different ways that we really have to approach those conversations and really go head on into the conversations, because I would say most people that do have firearms programs, they can't have these type of conversations because they don't come from it. And the fact that I have a team of people that come from it, and also a unique team that takes shooting and skill sets and shooting seriously, I think it's different. And we can kill a lot of the just the false impressions that they have on guns.
Yeah, it's a brilliant move because, like I said, most of these kids probably will never be empowered to own a firearm, responsibly and legitimately if someone doesn't guide them along that path, right? I was a kid who grew up totally listening to hip hop, immense, I'd say, in the culture. Those lyrics are part of my life, right? But I always understood the difference, right? Sometimes kids don't, or if you leave a kid to learn, it's just like letting a kid learn from a movie. You don't want to do that. You want to make sure that they understand that a lot of this is fiction. A lot of this causes a lot of pain for people. But those are just lyrics. They're just reporting on the things that are happening, right? Not some of them are actually out there doing it, but these are not role models. These are not real people, And I love the clip that you have of Kevin Dixie breaking down that a gun could be a tool of empowerment versus a tool of oppression, depending on how you use it. And I think that, as corny as it sounds, man, just getting in front of the youth at the right moment. And I use this story, it's going to sound goofy as shit, but you know, one of the reasons why I don't smoke cigarettes is I had someone I looked up to who I thought was the coolest dude on the planet, and one day I thought I was impressing him. I had a cigarette, I was smoking it, and he was just like, "Oh, come on, man, we don't need to do that." And it totally went the wrong way, right? Like how I thought he was going to react, because we thought we were tough kids, and the way he reacted to me changed the course of how I felt about cigarettes, right? And what you guys are doing is showing them you can still be cool, but be responsible with firearms. And let's just say some of these kids end up going the wrong route. At least they'll have the basic knowledge of firearms safety, right? And that's, I get it. Like sometimes, like you can't be saved or you can't be helped, and you got to go on your journey. But if you're smart enough to say, well, I got a little kid in the house, and I'm out here in the streets doing whatever I have to do, but at least I'm not leaving that firearm unlocked because I need my son to stay alive. Is because, just because you're that way doesn't mean you're going to pass along the idiot shit you do down to your children. Sometimes you're more protective of your children when you're in that lifestyle, and that's where you're building with these kids, which I think is awesome. Many of them probably, like you had told me, like many of them probably don't have somebody that could take them to an outdoor range and shoot with them. And as you know, I think when most people think of firearms use safety, they think of little white hunters, right? Like in rural areas, which is natural because that gun is a way of life. But the gun is also a way of life in rural, in urban areas. And to ignore that population, to say like, we're not even going to try to go in there and teach them that. Nothing sounds more racist to me than that, right? Like Raj was a good person at bringing the attention to all gun control is racist, and it woke up a lot of people. It woke up some racist people in the firearms industry that now are singing a different tune. And you're kind of smashing that whole stereotype that these kids don't have any hope. You know what I mean? And that's really what I love about the program, because once again, as the fire, and I'm gonna get off the soapbox, but as the firearms community, if we say 2/3 of all firearm deaths are suicide and the rest of those damn gangbangers, it's like, well, okay, then what are we doing to play our part, to help mitigate those numbers? And to me, playing the part, you have to play the part, not only because it's the right thing to do, and we could look at everybody else who doesn't know how to solve the problem and doesn't want to solve the problem and say, oh, we got it. Don't worry. You're going to screw this up. Let us go there. Right. But we also, go, this is an opportunity for future shooters of America. Right. Some of the fastest growing segments are some of the people that we ignored for so many years. And we're talking everyone from the Black community, the Hispanic community, the Jewish community, the LGBTQ community, women, right? And it wasn't forward thinking, right? Because it didn't get everybody involved in the positives of shooting sports. So it's important that we change that. And Kids the Kings and some of the other programs that are coming up, and the stuff that Kevin Dixie's doing, is there to be that change. And I love it,
Yeah, for sure. Shout out to Kevin Dixie too, because he's the one that opened up his 40-acre facility to be Kids the King's home range. So it's not just like a one-off thing anymore. He actually came up with the idea to work with the boys twice a month. So they'll be going through twice a month, 2 classes a month with him, and just scaling their progression and skill set of using guns. And yeah, like I said, we're doing it different. We're not doing the load, and no disrespect or no shade to anybody that does it this way, but our boys just are not interested in anything that looks like a hunting rifle. They want to use what they see in their entertainment. So that's what we're going to use. And I think it's going to be a lot different because we ultimately want to start a youth shooting sports team with them. So yeah, big shout out to Kevin Dixie. Everybody should be donating to the Greenwood Project because that's the name of the range or the facility. And yeah, it takes a village to do stuff for these boys. And my team, along with you, Mike, has been nothing but supportive. But yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, it just makes perfect sense. And what I think of this story, and I've told it a few times, but it had a lot of impact on me. The circles I get to walk in with Walk Talk America is great because I get to not only, obviously stay in my lane, which is the 2A community, but I get to step out and go into the mental health space and talk to a lot of people that are doing like real boots on the ground work in certain communities. And I remember speaking to a gentleman who was from Oakland, California, and somehow he was affiliated with the program where they put the sensors on the traffic stops, like at the intersections, just so it registers to hear a gunshot and notifies the police. Just because in certain communities, people don't even want to get involved, not for many reasons, with police coming, not just to get caught up with police, but also too, nobody wants to be a snitch. And, you don't know if your life's going to be in danger for calling the cops for something. And it was a cool program because the cops are at least dispatched, and it could save lives, right? Because when someone is bleeding out, every minute counts, every second counts. And I remember we were talking about the fear in the youth, and he was like, these Parkland kids, they're up on stage and they're saying, we're so afraid to go to school. We're so afraid to go to school, and he's like, the kids where I'm from, he's like, home is safe. School is safe. He's like, it's getting from home to school and then school back home where they're stepping over their friends' dead bodies and it's not safe or you can get caught up. And I remember that stuck with me because it's like you have to have a complete um, change in your perspective to see it. But when you realize what the issues are, and that's why I love you're bringing like the complex trauma and making these kids talk about some of the things that they've seen. You're not doing it in a corny way, you know what I mean? But you're letting them get something off of their chest. And many of these kids don't have an outlet for it. It's super important. And this is how I believe, the firearm and the shooting sports thing is just like it's a piece of it. But the other piece of it is certain communities need help with mental health because they feel like there's no place for them to go. And mental health has been looked down upon for so long, right? Like, especially in certain communities where you can't show weakness or it's not safe to show weakness. They need it the most.
Yeah. And I think just when people hear the phrase mental health or anything like that, it sounds a little foreign and it sounds like it might be complicated, but we break it down into very, very understandable ways for them to learn. Like our main focus with the boys is impulse control and emotional intelligence. So, how are you feeling? Can you control how you're feeling? And it's that simple. If they can start there, that's giving them some type of tool to go through the day to work on. And then we can scale up and build from there. But yeah, it's really just about breaking it down, making sure it's, digestible for them and not talking over their heads. It's really not that hard, especially if you're there with them every day. Like they kind of have to. Like I'll pop in. Well, we'll pop in like in the middle of their day while they're in class and just watch to see what they're doing. And yeah, it works. It works.
What type of reactions have you seen when like a kid is shooting his first gun for the first time? I mean, it's got to be pretty cool to see how excited they are. Or do you see fear? I mean,
Nah, it's boys. They're all excited. Every one of them.
Well, you say that. It's funny because when I was single and I lived in Panorama, for those that know, Panorama is it's like a adult playground in Las Vegas. It's right on the Strip. Um, there was a time in my life where I was going through a divorce, and my apartment was like a party place, and I had so many different people from so many walks of life, and of course, like when I would meet people. Um, and they found out that I worked in firearms and I owned an importer. What do they want to do? Like when we're sitting around the apartment and we're, it's before we're going out, they're just like, hey man, let me see some of those guns. And it was really funny because there were some, like, I remember in particular, there was one rapper that was at my house, and he wanted to see some guns. And I brought out the different guns that we represent. And dude, his hand was shaking, and his lyrics, he was talked about all kinds of grimy shit. And I was like, this dude doesn't know anything about firearms. And he's actually afraid of right now of unloaded guns. I could tell he didn't know how to work stuff. So, so I mean, everybody can act tough, you know what I mean? But you can clearly tell when someone doesn't know what they're doing and they have like nervous jitters. So I don't know. I just figured that some kids got to be freaking out, but that's amazing if they're all like, I'm comfortable.
Those boys was not excited to shoot those guns. Oh, I think we ran through 1,000 rounds of 22 in like less than an hour. I mean, we taught them how to load the mags, and they were doing it themselves. Like, yo, I loaded mine, I'm ready to go. because every time they had to go to the fire line, they had to go with one of the counselors. But yeah, load your mag up and wait for somebody to come get you. And every single time they were load them up, ready to go. The TX-22, the Taurus, I think that was their favorite gun to shoot. KD, what else do we have? We had a Smith and Wesson M&P 22 too. A regular little pistol. They love that too. But yeah, yeah, all excitement, which is great because then it's easier to teach them because now they're excited to learn about something that they want to do. So yeah.
Yeah, the safety element too. Like how many kids have trouble remembering to keep their finger off the trigger? You know, like trigger discipline or I mean, do you ever have any issues with muzzle flashing? I mean, these things are going to potentially happen. You know, I'm just wondering, like, do these kids? Do you find that they're really attentive and like, you know, super focused on making sure like their finger is not on the trigger when it's not supposed to be? 'Cause I've seen adults screw that up.
It's funny because I would say from teaching adults and teaching children, I've been flagged way less by children than I have by adults because they're sponges. So when you tell them something, they're gonna listen. And then we overemphasize on certain things. So we teach them the 4 safety rules, but the 2 that we emphasize on is keep it pointed in a safe direction and keep your finger off the trigger until you're ready to shoot. So they're hearing that the entire day. Like when we're up there on the line with them and putting their hands in the right position for their grip, we're telling them keep your finger off the trigger. But after a couple of times, they basically get it and they understand that if you pull that trigger, something's coming out of that muzzle, and that big hole that you just put in that target is probably what's gonna be the outcome. So let's not do that to anybody out here. And yeah, my main rule with my boys, it's kind of like our unwritten rule is if you listen and you pay attention while you're with me, you'll have a blast. If you don't, it's gonna be hell. So they understand that. My director Xavier, he's really good with keeping them in line. And then yeah, basically the other rule is if it gets to me, if the problem gets to me, it's a real problem. And that's when their day is completely ruined because I'm not going to let the one situation ruin the day for the rest of the boys. So I'll just isolate the situation and let the other boys that are doing correctly get back to it. But yeah, they understand. With boys, it's just about making them respect. I don't even know how to put this, but respect physical intimidation. Like they have to be scared of something because it's the only way they're going to respect it. And yeah, so a lot of the boys, fear and embarrassment, it works. Obviously,
Yeah.
it's not like derogatory. A lot of the time, they're allowed to crack the same jokes too. So it's not like it's a one-way street. They can speak to me, however, I speak to them. So
Right.
it's real fluent.
Yeah. I remember, I don't remember the details of it, but I remember you telling me you had to go off on a kid one time because he was just talking nonsense or something in the car ride about.
He bought a gun for like $5,000, and it was a FN 509. It was wherever he got the picture on the internet. That's the gun that he showed me, and I said, "You're either one stupid because you're a sucker and paid probably 5,000 times what you should have paid for that gun, or you're lying. So you can choose which one to tell us right now. Either you're stupid or you're lying. So pick." And he obviously just came out and said that he was lying. But yeah, but it's dumb stuff like that. Embarrass them real quick. They'll learn. How many times did our older male influences embarrass us in front of somebody else, and that was a learning experience? Like, yo, okay, let me not fuck with them because they're the big dogs. And yeah,
Yeah. What has been the general the feedback you get from the parents, right? And I know that you've said a lot of it's single moms, right? And that's why the program is super important because you're providing, whether you like it or not, you're providing a male role model to some of these kids, and especially in dealing with firearms, right? Like it's like looking up to that person. What are some of the What are some of the feedback you gotten from the parents?
I have yet to receive any negative feedback. I'll say that. I believe building a very transparent relationship with them in the beginning was paramount for the success of the program and the access to the boys because they trust me with them. They understand that I'm the rule of law when I have the boys, and they all also are they've all been introduced to what I do personally as far as shooting, going to the range, training, and stuff like that. So they know if I'm going to be taking them to the range, then it's probably going to be a good thing. And it's probably going to be the best way for their boys to learn anything about guns. So I've never had any bad feedback. Even the last trip we had, the moms were like, "Can you keep them longer?" And I remember we were actually at the range, and we were only supposed to be there until maybe like 4 o'clock. I looked up at the clock and we had been at the range until like 6. And I started calling all the moms. They were like, "We don't care. Like, keep them as long as you want to keep them." Like it's 7 to 14-year-old boys. That the other great thing that we're allowed to do for the parents is we give them a break from their annoying boys. And I get it. You know what I mean? Like, they're boys. If their energy and aggression is not like conducted towards something constructive, it's going to be them just bouncing off the wall. So I prefer them bounce off the walls with me, with someone who can deal with them, as opposed to just continuously stressing out their parents. So it's a relief for them too. So no negative feedback. Even when we introduced the idea of turning one of them into a competitive shooter, they were all for it because it was different.
Why is this so important to you, man? Like what? A lot of people could easily, hey, like, I like kids, I'll teach my cousin's, son to shoot, but I'm not going to try to invest time and energy. And you get nothing. It's just like Walk Talk America. I'm never going to be rich again. Like, that'll never happen. You did. And for me, like, I got to a point in life where I was just like, this is a chance for me to make a legacy and like kind of give back. And I love this industry. Why do you do this?
Honestly, it's probably more of a selfish reason because this is what I wanted when I was a kid. And I
Mhm.
remember the excitement and the feeling of going on field trips with my friends. So if I can combine teaching kids, life morals and giving them tools to walk through their everyday life that's going to accelerate their chances of being really successful, then I'm going to do that. And using guns as the martial art, to me, is one more unique because we're facing a problem head on with negative introductions to firearms. And yeah, it's what they need. It's modernizing, to me, the way it should be attacked. Yeah. Did I
Devin,
answer your question?
I think you
Yeah,
answered Mike's. Yeah.
yeah, you answer the question. I'm waiting for Kevin. I know Kevin's got a question. He's just
I'm
slow on the
trying to.
trigger.
No, Mike's feedback's coming in through Devin's mic, so I'm trying to manually mute Devin and then unmute myself, and I'm slow to the trigger
My
there.
bad.
Devin, bringing kids to the range, obviously cool. Everybody loves shooting guns, but mental health maybe isn't seen quite with the same energy. How do the boys react to those kinds of teachings and what you're bringing to the table?
Um, you can see the I guess for lack of better words, you can see the tension ease itself out of the room once the conversations open up. And you can see them get real vulnerable, and creating a space where they're allowed to express that and be open about anything that they want to talk about is probably the easiest way to actually teach them something, because if they can express themselves, a lot of times in black communities,
when it comes to single mothers and boys, everything's essentially going to be dictated to you. And you don't have a lot of say because your mom is focused on trying to keep you away from a lot of things that you're already interested in. And that's when you basically repel and just go towards it. So we just open up the floor to really let them express anything that they're dealing with. And it's really it's a really valuable tool to give them, being for them to be able to identify emotions and understand how to control those emotions. And even if they're getting to a point where they can't, being the outlet for them to be able to. So if they're going through anything, everybody has my phone number, my director Xavier's phone number, everybody, parents, kids, everybody. And it's open line 24/7. If there's anything going on, they are allowed to call us no matter what. I remember when we were actually in Wyoming at the University of or we were at the University of Wyoming, Mike, and I had to jump on the phone with the parent and the kid because they were having a pretty bad situation go down in school. But that's just part of it. You got to make sure that you're there for them, and that when they use those outlets that you provide for them, that they're used correctly, so that we can mitigate them having to use those. So that's really it. Is just being in the fight with them, making sure that they understand that they have resources to use, and making sure that you highlight when they do use those resources that they're doing something the right way. And it just grows from there. It's just planting seeds and watching it grow and letting them be self-sufficient.
How is this being received? I know lately you have been talking to a lot of, I would say, sort of high-profile people. You've been doing some interviews. I don't want to put your business out there. I don't know if you can talk about these things yet.
I got to introduce Kids of Kings and Walk the Talk America, both of them, to the co-chairs of the 2A caucus, Thomas Massey and Lauren Bulbert. Great people. They both loved it. Both of their minds, or you saw that their eyes just get big when I showed them like our Instagram page and what we were actually doing. And they said that's what needs to happen more. My question to them was, how can you or how can we partner together to make this happen more? And those are conversations that are going to continue. Yeah. They again, I haven't received any negative feedback from anybody. What I have gotten is ignored by a lot of schools. I will say that that's probably the biggest negative that we've had, is that we've had the program for multiple years now. We have, the resume to prove that it's working, and schools in bad areas are still ignoring a free resource. Like, I overemphasize when I contact any of these schools that we don't need anything but the access to the kids. Like, I've even told one administrator, like, yo, you pick the 5 worst boys that you have in your school and I will come mentor them for free every single week. Never got a response. So that's probably the biggest disappointing factor of it. But other than that, I've never gotten any negative feedback. And I honestly believe, and this might sound arrogant, but I believe that we're the solution to a lot of the problems. And once you hear it, it's like, how can you go against it? It's a foolproof plan. We're talking about their mental state, and we're focusing on what they're most interested in, which is, for boys, sorry to tell you, but it's going to be violence, guns, aggression, and anything that's going to hurt them. Like, it's boys. How many times did we take our bikes and jump off of something that we probably shouldn't have done, gotten hurt, and probably went back and did it again? Like, it's just something that if we don't address, we're just going to keep seeing the same olds. And if we don't want those same machine productions, then we got to do something different.
Yeah, I can see where a lot of people would be afraid of this program. And it's kind of like when you see someone not necessarily show their true colors, but their ignorance on something. And They'll say, "Oh, I'm not racist," but then they'll say like, "Oh, do you think it's a smart idea to let these people?" And you're like looking at them like, okay, Mr. Not Racist. Like that was the most racist thing you could have said. And believe it or not, like I've seen it come from I've had an argument one time with one of my friends who's black, and he was just like he hated guns because he looked at guns as something that was destructive towards his people and his community. And he said, I don't think it's good for my people. And I remember laughing. And don't have these conversations when you're drunk because they never turn out well. But I remember laughing and saying that is the most racist far right Republican thing you could have said. And this guy is far, I was joking, but this guy is the farthest thing from that. But it really does. It's almost counterintuitive to a lot of people to say like maybe the answer to educating and working on reduction of gun violence is to lean into it, take these kids that are going to be exposed to it and educate them. Because I think it's what you're doing is education, right? Let's face it. You're hitting the education piece, but then you're also educating them on mental health, to be emotionally intelligent. Emotional intelligence, I say this to everybody. I have a different opinion on different levels of intelligence, but emotional intelligence is a massive one, right? It could be you can make just as much money and navigate in different worlds if you have that emotional intelligence. So I think it plays a huge part of it. So maybe you don't have access to the books they have at Harvard, but you are salely off the charts when it comes to emotional intelligence. You're going to be able to navigate rooms. You know what I mean? You're going to be able to read people, and you're going to be able to take in information, stay calm, and then navigate from there. It's a huge thing. But I think a lot of people have trouble wrapping their heads around that. Like you said, give me your 5 worst. You're asking for the 5 worst. Right. And there's a lot of people that go, no, they're the worst. And you're like, no, give them to me because watch me change their attitude. Watch me change how they are. Watch me empower them. It's powerful.
Met like myself at 13 years old. Like that's the worst. My best friend Trav, meet him at 13 years old. Like we were menaces to society to the definition. And yeah, that's the other thing is like we've done everything that these kids think that they're either going to do, want to do, or hear in music. So we can talk to them about all of it. There's nothing that we haven't done, and that might be incriminating, but yeah, there's nothing we haven't done. There's nothing that we haven't done that that these kids like hear about that. Yeah, nah. So yeah, there is no worse to us. It's like, all right, like I've had a kid tell me, what did he say? And this is my favorite kid. Let me preference it by saying that this is my favorite kid. He was yelling at me one time and said, "Get away from me before I have somebody come to the school and shoot you." And I laughed at him. And I told him, I was like, bro, if you want to get one of your family members put on a t-shirt today, go ahead and make that call right now. And we can have that play out. However you choose to have it play out. And it's just, meeting them where they're at, understanding like, bro, nothing you're going to say is going to scare me. Nothing you're going to do is going to scare me. Like, I'm not going to move, and you're going to listen to me, and you're going to eventually understand what I'm saying. So those are probably some of the most funny moments to look back on, because same day that happened, 40 minutes later, me and the same boy were sitting next to each other, cracking jokes at somebody else. So it's really just letting them get through their little emotional roller coasters and not be afraid of anything that they're saying. Because do you remember remember the clip of I forgot who it was, but them asking Joe Rogan how many 7-year-olds it would take to like knock you out, and he was like, it would take at least 50. But that's how it is. Like, be honest with yourself. These kids, yeah, they can spew off whatever at the mouth, but nothing like I'll buy all Wolf tickets, all of the Wolf tickets.
Right.
And I don't allow you to mumble my face. And this is going to be the end of this situation or conversation, because if you mumble away, I'm going to follow you until with this conversation's over, because clearly you still got something else to say. And yeah, it's that intimidation factor, man. Like, they got to understand your words have consequences. You have freedom of speech, but that doesn't dissolve you of the responsibility of having those consequences come back to you for whatever you want to say. So you can't say whatever you want to say.
What do you got planned for? And this is kind of, I know the answer to this, but I want the people to hear it. What's the next step for Kids to Kings? You did the pilot program based in Atlanta. What's next?
I will say vaguely, if this next life step of mine happens, we'll be able to expand to Houston, Texas. And I think that will be massive. But what we have upcoming in the near future is we have the 2 classes a month with the boys. That's going to start in the beginning of August. We also have a pilot program with a gunsmithing school in the works to allow the boys to basically accumulate credits in gunsmithing. And then when they actually turn 18 and are allowed to actually apply and take on the program, they'll have credits already ready to go for that. So it's kind of like AP classes, but for gunsmithing. But ultimately, I have a lot of my friends and resources from the gun industry opening their resources to us and allowing us to create any type of connection to give the boys a different experience. I don't think there are very many other programs that are going to have a pilot program for gunsmithing. So I think that's pretty exciting. But yeah, that's what I would say we have coming up in the most near future.
Okay. Now, do you ever think about, and obviously, just like Walk the Talk America, this has been a crawl before you walk process, right? Slow, and you got to kind of get your feet underneath you and really perfect what the original goal was. But do you ever think you'll have a Kids to Queens? Like, would you ever open that up for little
No,
girls that are interested in the shooting sports?
I'm just gonna be honest. No, that's boys are my focus. I feel like I have enough boys in this world to focus on, to where I don't want to say that in a disparaging way, but boys are my focus. Like boys are what I know. I was one. I want them to all eventually be better versions of me as a man. So nah. Nah,
So
I'm
you're gonna leave
still
that door open. You're gonna leave
focusing.
that door open for the female listener right now, who's like, you know what? There's a
I
need.
support behind anybody else that would love to jump out there, but I got enough boys to deal with, man. 2 years ago, we buried one of our boys' cousins from being in a shootout, and he was only 14 years old. So I got enough work with these boys, and honestly, to me, it's me staying in my wheelhouse. Like I don't know how to raise a girl. I don't know how girls' minds work. I don't want to deal with their emotional roller coasters. I'm cool with my wheelhouse of young men, um, and hopefully that will just enhance the culture's experience with women, because we're also teaching them how to treat women the right way. But as far as girls, nah, man. I coached girls basketball once, and I was like, I'm good.
No, it's understandable. I just was curious, you know what I mean? Just because I look at that's a demographic too that's been largely ignored when it comes to the Second Amendment. And obviously you might be able to create the blueprint for, some female shooter out there that's from an area where it's much needed, and she could take that blueprint and run with it. You know what I mean? The whole idea is to get more kids involved in shooting sports.
100% support that. If there is somebody out there that wants to do that, go for it. I will support you 100%. I'm not doing it though. I will be your number one fan.
Well, to respect time, we've hit about an hour. Is there anything else you guys want to touch on? Did we miss anything?
No, I just want to shout out my squad, the Atlanta squad, man. Kevin Dixie, Brandon Davis, the Gorillas in the Mist team, all of them that have just decided to come on as the Kids to Kings counselors and trainers. that's huge. Like they're literally like they didn't ask me for anything but to be a part of it. So I want to make sure that they get their love and they get their flowers because it's not very many of us that are going to jump into something and invest into something that we are not going to see a return on. I've said it before. It's the Moses mentality. Like we're the ones that are going to get you through the wilderness, and then there's going to be Joseph, somebody that's going to take you to the promised land. But yeah, having people that understand that and are willing to get into the fight with you, I will always be appreciative of. So shout out to all of them that have helped me with this.
Yeah, and I kind of want to echo what you just said there, and I want the listeners to understand because I know Walk the Talk America has helped out financially, and when we're saying the help, it's nothing. It really, I mean, what Devin gets accomplished on the little budget that he asked for, it's insane, right? Every gun company, and like you think this would be easy, right? You look at all these gun manufacturers, you go to SHOT Show and you stand in these $1 million booths, and then they look you right in the face and they tell you they don't have any money. Sure. I'm like, let me just look at your here. How about this? I'll rearrange your booth next year. Let me be in charge of providing the booth for for Daniel Defense, and we will carve out at least $3,000 for Devin and Kids the Kings. But it's so important. Your small donation, your personal donation, literally. It could make a huge difference in these kids' lives. And I know it sounds like one of those silly commercials that we grew up watching, just like 25 cents a day, but it's true. Devin.
$10. That's one Zaxby's meal for one child after we
Right.
leave the range every time.
Yeah, $10.
Feeding a kid.
Yeah, but I mean, like, just and the joy that you bring to these kids and getting them involved in shooting sports, it's a no-brainer, right? And like I said, it's a $25 donation, a $50 donation. I had somebody the other day donate some money. It was a substantial amount. I don't know if he wants to be named, but it was substantial. It was like $500. But $500 for just the regular person who's just a 2A supporter who's not involved in any, that's a lot. And the first thing I thought of was that paid for the last Atlanta. You know what I mean? Kids the Kings program, which is excellent, right? I want to shout out Lara Smith from Liberal Gun Club. She still donates every month, and she wanted that money to be allocated to Kids the Kings. This is a small price to pay to reach a bunch of kids that, like I said, have never been introduced to firearms in a healthy manner, and Devin is doing that. So it's super important. I know a lot of people say, well, it's hard to donate because we don't know where the money goes. But when you're dealing with Walk Talk America and Kids the Kings, we know exactly where the money goes, and there ain't a lot of money there. So it's important to support us because we're not getting the grants from the government, people. We're not getting the research grants. We're not getting the government grants. In the end, we're still 2A people, and there's still that stigma that's placed upon us. And somewhere up the line, someone goes, oh, I really like this program, but they wear the gun thing on their sleeve. No. Right. And that's why it's important to support this stuff. And don't just give your money, put pressure on some of these companies to donate to this stuff. You guys have a voice, right? As the consumer, right into Daniel Defense, right into Taurus, and say, we really would like to see you supporting some of the homegrown 2A community 501c3s out there that are doing the work, because if you don't do it, somebody else outside of the industry will, and they will get the money for it. And we only keep coming with the great ideas, and they keep getting stolen from us, and people pretend like they came up with it. And usually it's not anti-gun people, but it's not us. So it's super important. So if you do have any money, every time a donation comes through Walk Talk America, obviously people could donate to you directly, Devin, but every time a donation comes through WTTA and someone specifically says, I want it to go to Kids the Kings, 100% of it is going to Kids the Kings. Like that's a fact. Because like I said, it's not Devin doesn't ask for a lot. And we all try to chip in and help how we can. And if you have some sort of resource, even if it's not financial, right? Like I just talked to Davidson's. I want to shout out Davidson's, because Davidson's going to help with some of the firearms that these kids need to have on the range.
Yeah, man. Any help is huge, and one of the biggest things I like to highlight is that being in the 2A space and the political side as well, you see how well funded and well structured, and well strategized the anti-gun side is, especially with using kids as the vehicle to push their movements. And I can say 100%, if we got the resources that they got, they would not exist, because I've been to David Hogg's marches. I've literally been in a crowd full of kids, giving them the opposite side of the information that they weren't privy to, and watching the light bulbs go off in their heads and thinking that, hey, maybe I'm supporting something that I shouldn't be supporting yet. And yeah, man, if y'all want to see your gun rights be restored, start investing in the next generation. And that also means giving them some type of political power as well. Let them understand, like, yo, like, there are going to be people that are going to try to get you to advocate to take your rights away before you're even allowed to exercise them. My boys know this, and none of them are going to be pro gun control in any capacity, because they understand, and they understand at a young age. So yeah, if y'all want to get rid of David Hogg, give me some money and I got you. I can get rid of him real quick like that.
Yeah. So tell everyone where they could find you.
Kids to Kings on Instagram, spelled very normal. And then the website to donate and to learn more about what we do is Walk the Talk America /kids -2 kings. Yeah, those are the two avenues that I would focus on. That's where you can find us. And then, like I said, our home range is Kevin Dixie's Greenwood Project. So if you follow Kevin Dixie, you follow Gorillas in the Mist online as well, you'll start seeing a lot more Kids to Kings content coming out of them as well. But yeah, those are the places to go. But donate, because the more you donate, the more kids we can bring into the program, and the more we can focus on, maintaining, restoring, and preserving freedoms, because ultimately that's what it's about, is creating a trickle-down effect for freedom.
Yeah, well said. Well said. Well, on behalf of all of our sponsors and everyone that tuned in today, we want to thank you. Thank you for your continued support. Please share this around. Anytime you can spread the word about any of these programs. And none of us have marketing budgets, right? So everything we do is guerrilla marketing. We don't have the opportunity to take ads out. So we need all the help we can get. You can drive that vehicle through your social medias or just talking about the programs. We really appreciate it. And until next time.